On behalf of the Lacercast, Pete and I would like to pay our respects to the now late, great William Friedkin. News came out this afternoon that the legendary director passed away at the age of 87. Fantastic run. This was a director who is known for his incredible filmography, but to the horror community is a very special director. When you ask the question, what's the scariest movie ever made? The most common answer you will get is The Exorcist from 1973. Whether you love it, whether you think it's okay, that is going to be the universal number one answer when asked, what is the scariest movie ever made? And as the years go by, horror as a genre we get recognized. Horror gets recognized periodically for its amazing achievements. With a movie like Get Out, for instance, winning Best Screenplay. The Exorcist came out in 1973. It was nominated for 10 Academy Awards, including Picture. William Friedkin was nominated for Director. It won 2 Oscars for Best Sound, oh my god, and for William Peter Blatty's Adapted Screenplay, which he won the Oscar for. Friedkin is a director who, he was a true original. He was one of a kind. He was a no-nonsense filmmaker. This was a guy who knew what he wanted, and he didn't give a shit if he was going to hurt your feelings. He did not care if he was going to rattle some cages and rustle some feathers. I'll hit all those cliches. This is a guy who, Best Director winner for his Best Picture winning The French Connection in 1971. He follows that up with what most will call the greatest horror film ever made. And even if you don't call it the best horror movie ever made, like I said earlier, it is going to be the universal scariest movie ever when asked. My dad used to tell me stories about going to see The Exorcist in the movie theater and people running for the door, people throwing up in the aisles, people passing out in the movie theater. And the closest, sadly, that I think my generation has to that is, going to, when Star Wars came back with the Star Wars prequels, and maybe with the late, like the MCU Avengers films. And I'm talking as like a general excitement. For all of the horror films that I've seen, I can't think of one that had this level of a visceral reaction that was both this intense reaction in the theater and was such a huge monster hit. I mean, The Exorcist was one of the most seen films in theaters, lines around the block, and then people would go in and pass out, vomit, and run for the door. His work on The Exorcist kind of guided the rest of his career. He'd keep coming back to it. One of his final films was a film called The Devil and Father Amorth, where he interviewed and films an actual exorcist doing the job. I mean, so this was something that he came back to. I strongly recommend, if you have Shudder, there's a documentary that's not even really a documentary. It's more of a filmed interview called Leap of Faith, William Friedkin on The Exorcist. It was made by Alexandro Filipe, who is a noted horror documentarian. He did a documentary on Alien. He did one on he did The People versus George Lucas. He did a documentary on Psycho. And this is just William Friedkin talking to the screen about The Exorcist, the production, the acting, how he got the scenes that he wanted, working on the script. And when you talk about just a renegade filmmaker who wasn't going to take shit, the stories in there about how they wanted to cast one particular actor, and he said, no, I saw this guy, Jason Miller, in a play. I'm hiring him. And he forces the studio to pay off nearly $1 million to another actor who never acted in the movie. This is a guy who, William Peter Blatty, by the way, Jason Miller, who Friedkin picked out to be Father Karras in The Exorcist, was nominated for a Best Supporting Actor Oscar, so he was correct. There's a funny story in Leap of Faith about when William Peter Blatty handed him his first version of the script, and Friedkin was like, no, you're butchering, this movie is going to butcher your own book. And he like revised the whole script and gave it back to Blatty to fix. That script won the Oscar for Best Adapted Screenplay. So again, this was a guy who was not afraid to hurt people's feelings, not afraid to step on toes, but he knew what he wanted, and what he wanted was usually the right answer. We just did Exorcist Month on the Lassercast. We watched The Exorcist 3. We have covered the original Exorcist, which I have here in the really nice Blu-ray special edition. We had rewatched and reviewed The Exorcist for a holiday horror that we were doing, where we were covering The Exorcist, The Omen, and Rosemary's Baby. So you could find that review on the channel. But for Exorcist Month, we did Exorcist 3. We covered the Fox show that was 2 seasons long, which is now streaming on Hulu. And we also talked a lot about the upcoming Exorcist Believer trailer. And we talked a lot about Leap of Faith, the documentary, which you can watch on Shudder. And a lot of Leap of Faith shows a bunch of his other films that I had never gotten to see, and I had them in my queue on my Roku, and now, sadly, that Friedkin has passed, I'm going to make it my business to finally watch films like Sorcerer from 1977, Bug, which I heard is a really intense movie from the early 2000s. I believe Ashley Judd is in that. Even a movie like Cruising, which I never saw, with Al Pacino, which is incredibly controversial, which should come as no surprise, being that Friedkin directed it. He actually had a movie that was in production, the Caine Mutiny Court Martial, which I believe is making like the festival rounds now, so his final film will be available to see soon. Kiefer Sutherland is the lead in that. If you're a horror fan, he also came back to horror in 1990 with this really wild movie called The Guardian, about this killer, this woman who is like possessed by the spirit of an evil tree, or maybe she is an evil tree. I saw it when I was younger, and I really liked it. I saw it again probably about 10 years ago. Again, it's a movie that I definitely want to rewatch now, and we'll probably cover for the channel. But William Friedkin, renegade director, total original, one of a kind. And if you're a horror fan, he's up there. He is, and if you're going to say, well, he only made one horror movie, well, or he only made that one horror movie, well, yeah, but it's the horror movie. It is the movie that you interview 100 people out on the street, even people who are not horror fans, and you go, hey, scariest movie ever made. The majority of the people, maybe even 2/3 of the people, are going to just name drop The Exorcist. We have watched it. Pete and I have watched it again recently. It holds up. It is so disturbing. It is so effective. The acting, the sound design, the makeup effects, everything about that movie holds up. And it is one of the greatest and one of the scariest movies ever made. And again, thoughts to his family. And we hope that William Friedkin rests in peace. And if you have Shudder, again, I cannot recommend Leap of Faith, William Friedkin on The Exorcist. I cannot recommend it enough. It is fantastic. So rest in peace, William Friedkin. We will miss you.